Listen up, folks across the land, and I'll tell you a tale about a man. And if you read the news, well, you might already know. Higher education was his trade. He was a tenured prof, and he had it made until he tried to change the status quo. Tried to evolve as an educator, explore some fresh creative pedagogy, improve his teaching methods, as it were.
I'm your host, Denis Rancourt. It's the 5 o'clock train. For the next hour, we'll have interviews and commentary and so on. And today we have a very, very special guest in studio with us. We have Dr. IGNACIO CHAPELA, who is a microbial ecologist and associate professor at the Department of Environmental Science, Policy and Management at the University of California, Berkeley. And that's going to be live in studio. We're going to have, he's also the keynote speaker of this evening at the GSAD conference, the interdisciplinary conference organized by the graduate students here on campus at the University of Ottawa. So we're going to move right into that interview as we speak. Welcome to the show, IGNACIO CHAPELA.
Thank you very much, Denis. Great to be on the train.
Well, I'm glad that you're here, and I think we could start by telling us about yourself. I mean, you've been involved in some battles on campus. You're involved with many issues that are related to social justice and so on. Could you just sort of give us an overview of some of the things you've been involved with?
Yeah, well, I guess I should just say that I try to be a biologist. And just biology moved under my feet as I grew up, and I still am trying to become a biologist. When I grow up, I want to become a biologist. They threw lots of things at us. They threw corporatization, they threw profit making, they threw privatization of our institutions, the institution of science, the institution of the university. So there have been lots of battles to fight along the way. Mostly it's been in the biotech field. I have been engaged in understanding what's happening with the release of genetically engineered organisms.
I want to interrupt you.
Yeah, please.
And mention that your battles have had some international recognition. I mean, that you're very well known as an academic activist. There's been some really big issues that you've fought. You've been at the forefront there. And also I want to ask you, I want to point that out to our listeners, but also I want to ask you, when you say they threw these things at you, who's they?
Yes, that's a very good question. It's ourselves. It's ourselves really out of control. And I think the question has always been, we have this fantasy of control, but in reality, we're really running out of control. And that's part of what my research has shown, that a lot of the manipulations that have been done with living organisms are not as controlled, are not as precise, nowhere near as precise as the people who are putting them out in the environment would like us to believe.
So, and then, of course, the profit motive is what's driving this, I would imagine.
There is the profit motive, and that is a very important one, but there are other kinds of conflict of interest, and I think the subject is conflict of interest. Do we have really at heart, what is it that we're doing? Are we just finding knowledge? Are we just discovering things? Or are we pushing some kind of agenda, political or economic agenda?
Now, this we now is the researchers, the professors, is that the we that you're referring to?
That is the we that I am referring to. We scientists with capital S, the people who have been groomed by society to become this new kind of priesthood of our times, that's we. And we have been put in many situations where there are problems of conflict of interest. Money is a very good one, but there are others.
And I mean, if your colleagues are like my colleagues here on campus, because I'm also a scientist and a researcher, a lot of our colleagues are not even sensitive to the question of conflict of interest. It's not really a concept that is forefront in our minds. In fact, we've been trained to seek funding and to seek collaboration with the corporate sector and to think in terms of how big the budgets are going to be.
Yes. Yes, money is necessary, of course, to do research. We need to have funding for equipment, for traveling, for doing experiments, and so on and so forth. But what has happened in the last 15 years or so, 10 years or so, is that our institutions have been captured by the money, by the profit interest. Where before we used to have an institution that would protect the scientist from the need to go out and sell his or her science to the best bidder. Today, that's really the situation we're in. And the stakes have become much higher because, at least in my field in biology, if you play your cards right, and if you do not have much concern for environmental or social questions, you can make a lot of money these days. It didn't used to be that way when I started biology, but now the stakes have been raised a lot.
Now, in the United States, it really is personal gain that we're talking about in the United States for high-level research professors, right?
It is, and
Yeah.
it is many millions of dollars that
Yeah.
we're talking about.
Right.
The question of conflict of interest is so curious now that I've heard a professor who is worth at least $50 million from his side company.
Right.
He actually wrote in a fiscal declaration, there is no possibility of conflict between what I'm doing inside and outside because the interests inside and outside are exactly the same. So there's no conflict.
What a wonderful logic. It's airtight. It's airtight.
It's Orwellian.
I've completely conformed to the capitalist corporate project, and therefore there's no longer a conflict of interest,
Exactly.
right? Beautiful, beautiful.
Orwell couldn't have written it better.
That's remarkable. But Ignacio, could you tell us, I mean, one of the really big battles you were involved with involved Nature magazine.
Mhm.
Could you give us that in a nutshell, what happened there?
Well, I had a long-term relationship with a group of indigenous communities in the southern Mexican state of Oaxaca. And they were very concerned about the idea that their corn could be contaminated by genetically modified corn. This is back in the 90s when the first releases were happening. So we had a long-term, multi-year discussion about it until they finally decided to establish their own labs. And it was in their labs that we made a discovery that the genetically modified corn that is planted in the US had already reached all the way there. Even though it was illegal to plant it in Mexico, it was already there many hundreds of miles away from the nearest legal genetically modified cornfield. That result, of course, called a lot of attention and a lot of interest, and we submitted it to the magazine, the science magazine Nature, which is, of course, the magazine of record. And I call it a magazine because that's what it is. Nature and science are like that.
Yes.
And Nature responded very positively at the beginning on the face of it. However, as the review process went by, and we went through 5 rounds of peer review.
5 rounds of
Yes.
review? I've never heard of such a thing.
No, it's very unusual because what was happening was that there was scandal internally within the industry and within the extension of industry into academia, that they were putting pressure into the Nature magazine and the editors, which is hard to believe, but it's
how
true.
would they have known? I mean, normally when you submit this, it's somewhat secret. I mean, only the reviewers see the journals and so on. Or did you make it public right from the beginning?
No, we were very careful not to make it public. I believe what happened was that the reviewers started talking about it with their colleagues, and somebody around there became alarmed that this would be politically very costly and economically costly for people within, for example, Monsanto, Syngenta, and so on. Syngenta didn't exist then, but it was Novartis.
Yes. And so it went through 5 rounds of reviewing, which is a remarkable process. I mean, that's peer review with a capital P. And but after that, it was ultimately accepted and it was published in Nature magazine.
It was published, it was accepted, but even as the paper was being published electronically, not even on paper,
Yes.
it was being discredited, targeted by a discreditation campaign that was eventually found out to be a coordinated and paid campaign by a PR company dedicated to viral marketing, which is the manipulation of the internet to create the impression of some, something that they
Very
want.
Sophisticated.
It was sophisticated. This was found out by The Guardian, the newspaper in England.
Yes.
And fortunately, because you get paranoid, when you start realizing that there are all these attacks that seem very, very unfounded.
Yes.
And yet they were very strong, so much so that today many people believe that the paper was retracted by Nature. Nature did some very funny moves that I could explain with more time, but it was never retracted.
It was published in the paper edition of Nature.
It was published in the paper
Okay,
edition.
so it was regularly published,
Yes.
but the editors of Nature did qualify it, did they not? Did they not make a political statement of some kind?
That's right. They published some unprecedented, by their own account, unprecedented statement in their 133-year history. They had never done something like this,
Right.
which was to say, on the basis of what we know now, and they don't say what it is,
Yeah.
we know that we shouldn't have published the paper back then. Which is the strangest thing to do
That's crazy.
in science.
Science advances by,
Exactly.
true advances.
Exactly. What
You
do
know
is-
more as you progress.
And
That's nonsense.
I wish that they had opened the possibility for someone to prove that we were wrong.
Yes.
Because that's the thing that a scientist would most gladly take.
Yes.
To be wrong is
Yes.
the thing that makes you most happy, because you're shown that your hypothesis wasn't right.
Yes.
So then you move on to a new hypothesis.
Although
but
I've met some scientists who were very unhappy when they were shown to be wrong.
I believe the definition of being a scientist is someone who is always trying to prove himself wrong, not to prove himself right, but to
As
see how
opposed
you
to
can
a
prove
manager
yourself
of
wrong.
research who
Exactly.
gets funding.
Exactly.
Yes, yes, yes.
There was a lot of coverage. The BBC ran a whole 1-hour program on, primetime
Right.
Friday TV on this, and there is a very good shot of Phil Campbell, the editor of Nature, where the reporter asks him exactly this question.
Yeah.
What were you thinking? And you see his face, and you can tell by looking at it in his eye that he doesn't know what to answer, and he just says, we just reserve the right to do whatever we want as editors of this journal, and that's it. He doesn't give an answer.
He doesn't say, and we're friends with Monsanto.
That's right.
Okay. What role do you think Monsanto played in this?
It's very difficult to know, but the investigation by The Guardian showed that Monsanto was paying this company, Bivings, the Bivings Corporation, in Belgium. They had offices in different places, but they were being paid in Belgium by Monsanto to run this campaign, presumably.
So here's a private corporation paying money to run a campaign to discredit science that is published in, the top magazine,
That's right.
the top science magazine in the world.
That's right.
Quite a story.
It is similar to what has happened to some people in the other environmental areas, and it's interesting to see that in cases like, for example, the global warming field, any attempt to do something like that in the Bush administration has been, a big scandal in the newspapers and so on. And yet, when it comes to biology, it's a lot harder. The onus of doubt is really put on the researcher. It's a very anti-scientific field right now, the biotechnology field. Very anti-scientific in the sense that questions are not welcome.
You're listening to the 5 o'clock train. I'm your host, Denis Rancourt, and we're almost halfway through the show here. We're still with our very special guest, Dr. IGNACIO CHAPELA from Berkley University, and we're talking about campus activism, the place of science in society, etc. Dr. CHAPELA will be giving the keynote talk tonight, which is entitled Reason Exhausted, Science, Environment, and the End of Progress, which is an intriguing title. Ignacio, would you like to tell us about your talk tonight? Maybe you want to start with the title or whatever. What's the first thing that you would say about your talk?
Well, if I have to present it in a few words, which is really the great thing about having an hour, is that you can really explain what you mean.
Yes.
But if I have to do it in a few words, I would say that I want to really explore what's happened with our relationship to the environment, to the non-humans, and how we have really painted ourselves into this corner where it looks like a very difficult situation to come out of, and how we keep throwing techno-fixes to techno-problems of our own creation, and how that connects with this tale, this story that we tell ourselves about ourselves. this tale of progress, this tale of rationality. And I'm going to try to invite the students, after talking about the actual details of what we're doing with genetic engineering, what we're doing with the fisheries industries, and so on and so forth, after going through the details of that, I really would like to show how the whole edifice, not only of the university, but the whole edifice of progress and the whole edifice of science and technology-based innovation and progress is really crumbling, and it's really tired, it's exhausted. And I would like to try and show that there are two very important battles here. One is the battle that everybody recognizes, which is the battle against irrationality. But the one that's really difficult to deal with is that we have to confront a very important battle with rationality. So reason as a natural resource that is running out in a very important way, historically, culturally, is something that we rarely talk about. And I'm really glad to have access to what I think is the best intellects in this region of the world to try and discuss these questions tonight. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, it's always good when you flatter your audience.
Yeah.
Now, but I'm tempted to want to challenge you on one point here. This idea that reason is important. I find that academics often overplay that in the sense that they will push you to learning and to reading and to studying the question and to having to know all the background and so on as a substitute for action. Sometimes it's used in that way, as a substitute for caring so much that you're actually going to do something about it, you know? Oh, we need to study it more, we need to get the message out, we need to educate people.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this is not a criticism of you, because you are a man of action. You go out there, and so first maybe you could address that tendency that academics have to not act, and then maybe you could tell us about some of your actions.
I tend to agree with what you just said, but I think we're talking about two different things. I think you are talking about reason as just thinking, just sitting on, a couch, kind of philosophizing about problems instead of engaging with them.
Yes.
What I think I want to talk about is the problem of this ideal of reason, this Platonic idea. I mean, the problem with Plato. The problem with Plato that has followed us all the way to here, which is a lie that that what we're living is the mirror, the image of something that is more real than what we have, and that we have been denied the opportunity of realizing that this is it, so that we have to live it not only as a mirror that we need to reflect on, that we need to reason about, but that we need to live it as a whole body experience, if you will, as a whole society experience, that we need to engage with the world not only as an image of something better, a paradise.
Right.
Here I'm thinking a lot about Dave Noble, who is your neighbor here, who has developed these ideas a lot, and I think he's really right that we have been denied. We have been lied to. We have given only part story. It's not that reason doesn't work, but it's not the whole story. And somehow, the fascinating thing about our times is that we really have reached the edge of Western civilization, the civilization based on reason. And we need to do something new, something different, that is not simply to progress. It's not simply to propose a new technological or reason fix. We need to really start living in a very different way.
I would throw this out at you again. I'm just going to inject something here, because you mentioned Plato and the nature of reality and so on. I'd like to say that what is real is people's suffering. What is real is the fact of these incredible injustices that our system of exploitation creates, right? These imbalances in power, the oppression, the suffering, the stuff that's far away from us, but that's also near us on a different level in our jobs, in the way that our mental environment's created, etc. Right? So it's a suffering.
Yeah.
take away our agency, take away our forests, take away our dignity by exploiting others somewhere else in the world, you know?
And you know, you've said it very well, you've written it, Denis. I've read what you write on your blogs and so on, and I think you've said it very well, that by focusing on, for example, the physics of the atmosphere, CO2, we take away the reality of suffering and happiness, the human reality of these problems. We refuse to deal with them as if they were social and human problems, and deal with them as if they were problems of just content of CO2 in our atmosphere. And you say it very well when you say, well, if what we're worried about is human suffering, that we should attend human suffering.
Yes.
If what we worry about is refugees, then we should pay attention to the refugees.
And you do pay attention to corporate-induced suffering right on your campus. You take them on.
Well, anybody who comes to the talk tonight will hear about a battle that we're waging against British Petroleum, of all beasts, together with the national labs, you know, the military establishment at Berkeley, right on campus. They came in with a $500 million cannonball, throwing it at us, and it's been a pretty nasty battle, but it's a very beautiful one too. There are students that have been sitting up on trees for since November of 2006 as a form of activism, and they haven't come down. There are all kinds of ways of resisting and resistance that are happening right on campus and around the world, and I want to talk about that also tonight. So I invite you to come.
We very much look forward to it. Thank you so much for being in studio with us.
Thank you, Denis.